And for all of you guys, just so you do know, this is being recorded. So if you did miss it, if you want to share this with anybody on your team, I'll make the recording available to Carolee, who will then share it out with you guys. So the critical IT security protections every business must have in place. Ultimately, are you prepared for cyber attacks, data breaches, infrastructure failures, or even natural disasters? And how is it going to affect your operation? So who is Intermix IT? Intermix IT provides comprehensive, secure, reliable, affordable managed IT services to small, medium businesses, and we are nationwide. We've been serving the Central PA business since 2003. We've been named a top 500 best IT support company globally by CRN Magazine and MSP Mentor. CEO named in the top 250 most influential people in managed services. So we've been around a while. Over the last year, we have extended outside of the Central PA region. We have clients now in Kansas, Florida, Illinois, just to kind of name a couple places that we're helping clients with their IT needs. The questions we're going to answer today is how should you prepare and react for both internal and external network infrastructure threats? Why securing what you have is critical for your business? Is using the cloud for redundancy risking your security? And how can you review your network infrastructure and data storage to ensure that it can withstand disaster? But ultimately, we are going to cover, how to avoid being a sitting duck and protect everything that you've worked so hard to achieve. And I always like throwing this one in because if you don't take network security seriously, you really are a sitting duck, and you're just, one IP scan away from being a target of an attack. So just remember, we're going to cover how to avoid being the sitting duck. And I hope you all, if it's not questions in here, I hope you guys take some of the things out of this session and take it to your current IT or your vendor and kind of ask some of these questions to see how you are being protected. The biggest danger is your complacency. Success breeds complacency. Complacency breeds failure. Only the paranoid survive. That goes right back to that sitting duck analogy that I just kind of threw out there. This comes from Andrew Grove. He's the former CEO of Intel. And if you just kind of say, I'm being successful, everything's running smooth, let's just, put it on cruise control and go. Well, it doesn't work for your business because there's people trying to take your business, and they're going to be constantly changing and evolving to kind of one up. But also in technology, if you're not thinking the mindset of, I could be attacked tomorrow, I could download ransomware tomorrow, then really you're not doing the service, because you need to know what happens if you do download it. Are you going to be able to get back? Is it a 15-minute recovery time? Is it a one-day recovery time? In the state of Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania State Democrats almost a month ago was attacked with a ransomware, and there are still a lot of the files that they lost that they have yet to get recovered. So you look at what that recovery time objective is for your organization, and how long can you survive being without a core database, being without core financial data, being without those Word documents or those contracts in PDF form. So really just kind of think about all that as we go through this today. How to prepare and react for internal and external network threats. We're going to kind of just some internal threats, malware viruses. According to a PC World report, there's an average of more than 82,000 new malware threats per day. Creators actually are selling the malware on the dark web. Buyers are modifying and deploying that malware, creating kind of its own unique signature for the same root malware, but allowing it to kind of work a little bit differently and on different servers and with a different backend and different searches. And at the end of the day, if a virus creator can create a ransomware virus and he could push it out to his servers and push it out, there's limited reach. But if he sells that same code on the dark web and 20 people with the same capabilities as that one person, now you're timesing the reach of that root code times 20. And it's one of the reasons why ransomware is becoming such a hot topic, is because that's actually what the creators behind the ransomware is doing. They're not running the script themselves. They're actually selling the script and having others run it, and they're making the money by selling it, and the people that are running it are making money from people that are not deploying proper backup processes. A writer once asked a literary agent, what kind of writing pays the most? Her answer was simple: ransom notes. I mean, if you think about it, what type of writing pays the most? It is, a ransom note. It's the same thing with computers. When you look at your personal computer, think of the pictures, think of the music, think of, X, Y, and Z, the memories that would kind of just drive you crazy if you lost. And that's what's happening. Sensitive data in the wrong hands, and they're extorting money for you to be able to recover that data. And if you don't have a valid backup, you're really stuck between a rock and a hard place where you almost have to pay the ransom. Another internal threat is an infrastructure single point of failure. And think of this as, the internet connection goes down. Do you have a backup internet connection? If the firewall stops working, does that take your entire internet down? If your switch in your office stops working, is there another switch that's going to get you back online? For most businesses, this is, a small aspect in it, but looking at single points of failure along the chain from, internet connection down to your computer, where is that single point of failure? Where is the weak points in your network that could either take you offline or, even worse, infect the whole network? End users remain the largest uncontrollable threat to your network infrastructure. Having proper computer use policies, training is a must-do, as threats are only getting harder to distinguish between threat or not. And this comes into play a lot with phishing emails. And, we're going to get into kind of more spam. But spam, oh, this looks like legitimate. I was expecting something from FedEx. Just clicking on that link is enough that, it can actually bring that ransomware into your network. Spam remains the single biggest driver of big breaches today. If we look at some of the biggest data breaches in recent memory, JP Morgan, Target, RSA, Security, those are just a couple of the big ones, and they all began with what's known as a phishing email, or a poisoned email in Brian Krepp's quote, but it's nothing more than a phishing email. It's an email that's designed to look legitimate in one way or another, that is actually either trying to capture your username and password, capture personal information, or just blatantly infect your network with ransomware. Another internal threat is mobile malware. Here's just kind of a chart coming up to Q3 of 2016, showing kind of how prevalent mobile malware is becoming in the industry. And if you think about it, infecting one phone, be it an Android phone, be it an unlocked or hacked iPhone, be it whatever, letting that device onto your corporate network, in theory, and it has been proven that it can actually infect and capture data that's on your network. So what does your mobile use policy look like as far as internally and having end users connect whatever device they want to your network? Is there any sort of tracking? Is there any documentation? Is there anything that protects the network? Is there anything that protects the end user? And knowing kind of just how people are using mobile devices on your network, or setting up unique networks for mobile devices, internal threats of mobile malware is going to be something that's only going to gain in prevalence and gain in prevalence. So, I mean, just touching on mobile malware a little bit more, this was an article from 2013, so this isn't new. For the first time, a small data breach drew actually a $50,000 fine to an Idaho hospice. I don't want to read the whole article, but someone losing a laptop that contains sensitive information with 400 some patients, they ended up having to pay a lot of money because the data wasn't encrypted. If you have laptops that are out in the field, if you have mobile devices that are connected that potentially have an application with your data on there, what is the protection of that information? Data should be encrypted. In Tennessee, personal information is considered a person's first name, first initial, last name, combination, driver's license, social, any information including logins, passwords, credit card, access code, passwords. There's so much information that your salespeople may have access to that they may think of it as no big deal, have an Excel document on their C drive, but at the end of the day, that laptop gets stolen. Do you know what information was on that laptop? Because if you do, you're able to at least notify those people. If not, it usually comes in the form of a phone call. Hey, I started getting some information, and it looks like it came from you. And then it's then you're investigating, oh, we had a laptop that was stolen, or someone's iPad that had, information was stolen. I know you're not a HIPAA-related industry, but we take a lot of, security procedures and stuff that come out of HIPAA and try to apply those across the board because they're usually pretty good. Some internet, some external threats, internet connectivity. That, unfortunately, is something you cannot control. When Comcast decides to go offline, Comcast is going to go offline. And the typical process, you pick up the phone, we call Comcast, report the issue, Comcast comes back up. But when you're running core services, your email, web applications, internally, having that second ISP, a second internet connection should always be configured, because if your core services, if you're hosting your email internally, when your internet goes down, email's not being delivered. Email can't be sent outside the organization. And you're just sitting there waiting for Comcast or whomever your provider may be to come back online. Electricity outages, battery backups typically are going to give you 5 to 15 minutes of uptime. If you're hosting those critical operations inside your building, having a generator, having a second power source running into the facility, something that has the capacity to power your core network infrastructure to keep you online and running. A complete building outage, fire, flood, natural disaster, what's going to cause your complete building to go offline? What is your current plan if you lost access to your entire building? What is, do you have a plan? I think is the ultimate question you have to ask yourself. And if you have a current IT vendor, asking them, what is our plan if our building caught on fire? Because, my documents, my email server, my applications, my whole business is housed in this building. And what would happen if a fire, flood, or another natural disaster happened? So, how do you ensure that you're prepared? Some recommendations: eliminating single points of failure, proper spam, virus, email filtering. Even with the best spam and virus email filtering, there is absolutely the possibility of a new ransomware string, a new ransomware phishing type email to find its way through. They design them to look legitimate. They design them to trick the spam and virus email filters. They design them in a way to sneak past those walls. So even with that proper spam, virus, email filtering, remember, there's still that opportunity. Control what websites employees are accessing. Lock down the use of third-party cloud apps. Dropbox, just to name one, is, it's one of those cloud applications. You have employees now that are using Dropbox. What are they using Dropbox for? If they're throwing, some Excel documents up in the cloud so they can work on it when they get home because they're behind schedule, well, Dropbox was hacked that night. That Excel document with your client information happened to be part of the hack. You didn't know the employee was using Dropbox until a week later when it's like, oh, I may have had some stuff up there. So, this all comes down to that acceptable use policy and making sure your end users, your employees, know how to use technology the right way and securely. Implement that computer use policy, a mobile device policy, security protocols. Put the things in place to protect your network. And of course, back up your systems properly. It protects from a number of threats, but make sure we're backing up. the employee education, acceptable use policy, lock down the ability for employees to use unsecure or unpatched home PCs. If you offer VPN connectivity, in Pennsylvania, once a year, twice a year, we're going to get a big snowstorm, and it's going to ultimately shut down the business probably for a day. If you allow employees, be it critical, be it non-critical employees, to connect in remotely, do you know what computer they're using at home? Are they using a Windows XP computer that has no longer been supported by Microsoft, that has viruses and ransomware on? Are you allowing a Windows 8 computer that has no virus protection? So kind of asking those questions and knowing and including those in that computer use policy, your internal employee education, that just knowing what they're doing and how they're doing it is going to help secure you and your network in the long term. Why securing what you have is critical for your business? But we're too small. Nobody's going to bother to hack us, right? Well, you're wrong. 1 in 5 small businesses fall victim to cybercrime each year, and that number is growing fast. Small business are low-hanging fruit. They don't believe they're a target, and therefore they have very loose or no security systems and protocols in place. You've heard me say a number of times over the last 20 minutes, 25 minutes, just how important it is to have that acceptable use policy, the computer policies in place for your employees. Because if they don't take security seriously, or you don't take security seriously, then you really are just a low-hanging fruit, and all it takes is one hacker, one person that has a little bit of spare time on their hands and nothing better to do, to find your IP address, find an opening, and just wreak havoc. Half of all cyber attacks are actually aimed at the small business market. That's actually out of a Forbes article, 5 Ways Small Businesses Can Protect Against Cybercrime. So they're not just going after the big guys, they're going after the small guys too. So $201, $201. That's the reputational damage, loss of clients, class action lawsuits, individual lawsuits, legal fees, compliance lawsuits, replacement of data, downtime, loss of productivity. Just because you're a small business, that doesn't mean your customers' information is any less valuable to them. 201 is the average per person cost that a small business is going to pay if caught in a loss of PII or personal informational data, because clients are going to leave. Class action lawsuits over, hey, so-and-so gathered my information, paying, for 1 year, 2 year of, credit monitoring if you're giving away credit card numbers and stuff like that. Compliance lawsuits, replacement. I mean, just the average per person, per attack is just $201. So, I mean, if you look at it and you have that Excel document of, 40 customers, take that 201 times 40, and kind of you can see how quickly this can add up. I said it earlier, 82,000 malware threats, every single day, and it is absolutely critical that we just keep that. There's new variants, and there's a lot of new variants of these viruses and these malwares that are released every day, and there's only so much that your antivirus provider, your malware provider, preventers out there can do to stay on top of it. And when you have that much new being released every day, it is definitely possible that a new threat, a new way of thinking is going to get through undetected, be it for a day, be it for 2 days. Eventually, these antivirus programs get caught up, but it does happen. The digital underground's thriving black market. Now, I mentioned earlier in the presentation how the developers of ransomware are actually selling the code of ransomware and not being the ones themselves that are releasing it into the wild. And that comes down to this, the thriving black market. A credit card detail, on the black market, the dark web, someone's going to pay between $2 and $90 for credit card information. iTunes accounts, right around that $8 mark. Physical credit cards, $190. card cloners. These are the machines that will actually, you know, print out credit cards, and they're punching in your information that should be in there, but they're cloning your credit card on the machine. Fake ATMs. So these are, you know, the machines. You know, you walk up to a bank, you know, slide your card in, you get money. There's actually fake ones out there. I mean, there's been a lot of news recently on skimmers. And what the skimmer is it's a little device that goes over top of a card reader on, you know, a gas pump or an ATM machine. You know, those are out there as well. But you actually have the capability of getting pretty much an already hacked ATM machine that it may give you money out at the end of the day, but at the same token, it's copying all of your card information for the person that bought it. You know, anyone can easily buy the training, tools, services for committing fraud, hacking, stolen credit cards, fake websites, etc. Really, you know, an hour on Google is going to give a lot of information on kind of how to do different stuff with this. And if, you know, if someone wants to do evil things, they're going to find a way to do evil things. Is using the cloud for redundancy risking security? Now, is the cloud right for you? You know, and lower infrastructure, you know, capital expenses, you know, that's, you know, a very nice thing. Whenever you think of, oh, I have to add some servers to my local infrastructure, you know, but we can lower some infrastructure capital expenses, but you're replacing that with new monthly rental fees because you don't now own the infrastructure, you're renting the infrastructure, you know, in the cloud. You're going to have an expectation of better uptimes. If you're hosting the system, your server in the cloud, if you're hosting your email in the cloud, there's the expectation that the provider that you're using in the cloud has built in the redundancy, doesn't have the single points of failure, and has built in a lot of the safety nets to keep you up and running. You know, not all clouds are created equal. And this is kind of one of the things, you know, you go around to websites and they'll say, you know, I have a 99.9% uptime. Well, a 99.9% uptime, or the 3 nines, is about 8.76 hours a year. I mean, you think about it, 8.76 hours, that's, you know, a business day. So, I mean, it's kind of, okay, what is your, you know, what do you do when you go down? Kind of, then you're kind of looking at it that way. You get kind of 99.99, the 4 nines, 52.56 minutes a year. So you're getting a lot better redundancy, and you're not losing potentially a whole business day with one outage. You know, you get into the 99.999, which is, you know, just over 5 minutes. You know, and the top ranked, you know, is 99, which is 31.5 milliseconds a year. So whenever you're visiting these websites and you see these 9s, and if you're shopping for a solution to host your email, to host this, to host that, you know, look at the 9s and compare the 9s. You're going to pay more for more 9s, and ultimately that's because you're getting a more guaranteed rating of what their uptime is. You know, how many data centers does the company you're looking at using? Is it, you know, Microsoft that has X number of data centers around the world and X number around the U.S.? Is it, you know, just this little mom and pop, you know, place out of Texas that has one data center? And kind of, it's like, if you're hosting your stuff in that one data center and they go down, kind of what is the ramification? What does the backup look like? What is this? You know, it's all the same questions you have to ask yourself when hosting the infrastructure locally, but you're asking the same questions before you choose what data center you're hosting in. So you know, what is my recovery time objective if something goes wrong? What if, you know, the hardware dies? What if this? What if that? You know, knowing what questions to ask are crucial. Private cloud versus public cloud, you know, I put this in here just to have that conversation. A private cloud is really just your own server that's already connected to the internet. You know, if it has a static IP address and it's sharing a website, you have a private cloud at your office now. And a private cloud is something that is completely under your management. It's completely under your security windows, your protocols. You know, and then a public cloud is something more like that Microsoft Office 365, where you're going to have X number of clients that are kind of sharing the same resources that you are, but you believe that the security measures that are put in place are going to protect your data versus their data. So private cloud versus public cloud, absolutely. Services that you absolutely should consider hosting in the cloud today, DNS filtering, DNS security. For those of you that don't know what DNS is what takes www.intermixit.com and converts it to the server IP address, or a bunch of numbers that correspond to what computer sitting on the internet that intermixit.com should be routed to. Your email. Having email in the cloud is absolutely a redundant tool. Office 365, Google Apps, two of the top players right now, and absolutely two solid options. You have email spam, virus, archiving. Depending on what your compliance is in the industry or in your position, do you need to archive emails? Having email archiving in the cloud before it hits your local environment or before it hits your email in the cloud, what that's doing is that's saying, you know what, even if someone gets the email and immediately deletes it, I still have an archived record of that email. And ultimately, a service in the cloud is always going to get its updates. Whereas if you have, a physical appliance doing your spam and you miss an update one day, or it loses, some sort of connection to the update server and it doesn't get updated, then potentially some of those latest spam threats could be introduced. An off-site backup repository. I put in here a hybrid solution, and I did the same with voice over IP and telephones, is because you can completely host all of your backups in the cloud. You could completely have a phone solution that's 100% cloud-based, where they ship you phones, you plug them into an internet connection, the MAC address talks to the internet, it says, okay, this is where I'm going, it knows what to do. But having a hybrid solution, with backups, if it's just data recovery, it's going to be faster to recover locally than it's going to be to recover, download from the cloud and go over. Or, and with phones, if the internet goes down, you would lose phones. With a hybrid solution, you would still have the capability of, paging. You'd still have the, conference calls internally, talking to other employees within that same office via your phones. With, the cloud-based, you lose that functionality with everything else when the internet is down. And application remote connectivity. If you have, one core application that, you cannot afford to be offline, and, hosting that in the cloud is absolutely capable. Setting up like a remote desktop environment for it, completely possible and should be considered. So how to review your network infrastructure and data storage. Really, there's 3 steps. A threat assessment. What's lacking in your security right now? How are employees using your company-owned devices? What third-party cloud apps are you using? Are your systems truly being backed up? When was the last time you tested the backup? Just rename a file and then call whomever and say, hey, I lost this file, can you recover it? See, if they can. What are your exposed risks? Whose job is to make sure your network's protected, and how do you know if they're doing their job? Step 2, create an action plan. Based on what's discovered, what do we need to do to ensure the systems, the data, the operations are secure from theft, compromise, corruption, etc. And then step 3 is obviously going to be that ongoing maintenance. Don't get comfortable in that set it and forget it approach, because out there the attackers don't. And as I covered earlier in the presentation, they're constantly looking for that newest hole, that newest leak, that newest vulnerability, and they're just looking for your IP address to see if that vulnerability is open or closed. So the first step is free. At no cost or obligation, I can come out to your office, conduct that threat assessment for you. We'll outline what, oh, look at that. I didn't update this one. But yeah, we'll outline what you need to do. We'll build the value of each point. We'll make sure, we look at the internet connection down. I'm going to identify, what your backups look like. Do you have an acceptable use policy? Do you have a mobile device management? What antivirus are you using? What spam are you using? Our network assessment, our threat assessment is very thorough, and it covers so much of your network And really, at the end of the day, it's going to be a copy that you're going to be able to keep. That's going to, I usually recommend throw it on a flash drive and put it in your fire safe, because it has serial numbers, it has all the information of all of your technology assets available to you in one easy to locate place. So if a disaster did happen, you would at least have information to provide the insurance company. Employee training, etc. 3 things to know. The offers, first come, first serve. There's no obligation to buy or do anything. This is an application. I want to make sure that I can help you before, we come out and we do the consultation. If I don't feel as though we can really help you, and you don't feel as though kind of you want us to help you, there's some relationships that just won't work. And kind of by that application, it allows us to really get that, that base understanding of what you have, and just make sure that we can help you. So what to do now? By all means, if you do want us to come do that assessment, visit intermixit.com/assessment, or just intermixit.com. On the homepage, there's a link. But definitely check it out. It's going to take 3 minutes of your time to fill out the assessment. And the network assessment, we typically an hour to an hour and a half. We come out, and like I said, we provide you a ton of information on what your network security looks like today, what it should look like, and really give you the roadmap to making your network better. Free bonus, if you'd like, I can get everybody a copy of the Security Infrastructure Redundancy Audit. Well, that's really, that's the same. That's the assessment. A Security Infrastructure Redundancy Audit. That's included in that threat assessment. So definitely, that's an extra $360 value that we kind of put right in there with the threat assessment for you. So kind of at this point, I'm going to unmute everybody. And if you have any questions for me, by all means, feel free to ask away in the chat, or just openly in the conversation. And everyone now should be unmuted if you have a microphone. It looks like just Eddie and Justin are the only 2 that I don't have microphones for.
Well, you can hear a pin drop.
Yeah, I was going to say, Carolee, do you have anything?
No, I mean, I just want to say, I appreciate you doing this for us today. And, we've got a lot of experience with our relationship with Intermix, and they have, over the past couple of years, really enhanced our security measures, enlightened us, and opened our eyes about a lot of holes that we had in our systems, our network. And we are on total lockdown now, and feel very confident that the education that we've just received from them alone, has been very beneficial to us. And it's very important to educate your employees, I think, about proper processes. I think that's key. On a regular basis here, we are constantly reinforcing with our staff proper processes, and if in doubt, don't open the email attachment, that sort of thing. But no real questions. I mean, we obviously have a good relationship and understand each other really well, so I know what's important, and I hope that everyone attending got some key points out of this today. Are there any questions? Anything that you'd like me to address a little bit more in detail, maybe?
I do see 2 questions that came in over the chat session here. Eddie Kennedy asked if we would travel out to your sites, even to Georgia. And Eddie, just to kind of answer that question, if need be, absolutely we would. I do have clients currently in Kansas, Florida, St. Louis, just to kind of name some of the states outside of Pennsylvania that we do work. 99.9% of what we do is remote. But at the same token, I do have the capability of getting someone out to your site if need be. Push come to shove in an emergency situation for, locations outside of, a normal drive for us. I'm part of a networking group nationwide of companies similar to ours, and I could get someone literally to come out on site, sometimes even with an IMIX polo already on, and just going through that process with you to do that quick emergency repair. But 9 times out of 10, we are very proactive in what we do. So we're going to know that that hard drive is starting to fail typically before it starts going to that red light, because I'm looking at things that the hard drive is showing that it's starting to go, more so than I'm looking for that alert that the hard drive just failed. I want to be proactive in your network management so that I know what's going on before it happens, because ultimately if it happens and it becomes a reactive nature, then we're looking at downtime, and it's unscheduled downtime. Justin, question here: how often do you recommend replacing, upgrading Wi-Fi firewall and access point infrastructure? You know, your network firewall, you're probably going to get 5 to 10 years out of. The important thing to remember with your firewall is to make sure that you have the security license. So intrusion prevention, make sure your security services, if you have email, the malware scans and stuff like that, because that firewall really is that wall in between the outside world and your inside wall. So making sure that your equipment is constantly licensed, making sure that it's licensed properly, goes a very long way. The typical lifespan on a lot of the firewalls is right around that 7 years, and that's when the manufacturer says, hey, that device is out of end of life, we're no longer going to provide you that support year. So kind of that's usually when it's time to say, okay, I can no longer get the security services, so it's kind of time to move over. As far as access point infrastructure, the access points, those are internal to your network. If you have a good access point infrastructure, you're going to get 10 years out of. The only reason you're going to look at changing is to get to the newer technology and speeds. The current speeds of Wi-Fi using the AC network is actually faster than gigabit wiring when it's used correctly. So kind of just think of it that way. Really, the wireless is going to work. It's going to work for 10 years. It's going to work until the hardware says I'm done working. But for the most part, you're looking in that probably that same, about that 8 to 10 years on the wireless infrastructure. And the big driving force behind that is going to be just staying with the current speeds, the current technology that's out there. Every year, Apple's going to update their phone. It's going to have in there the capability for the latest Wi-Fi chips. It's going to have, that newer technology ready to support. And it just comes down to, does your infrastructure support it as well? Eddie, I'm about to do an upgrade on my server. I'd like to consider using the service after the upgrade. Absolutely, Ed. We can definitely help you out before. We can help you out during. We can help you out after. I have no problems either way. So, what I would do is I'd do that intermixit.com, go through the network assessment, kind of just, give us that base information, and we'll have a short conversation with you up front. And, literally, just tell us what your expectations are up front. If it's, I'm going through a server upgrade, I'm pretty comfortable with what I'm doing, but, I want to have that network assessment done after, by all means, we can do that assessment after the fact. It's something, it may even be worthwhile. We may be able to save you some money, somewhere else by looking at something you haven't thought of, or using cloud technology to kind of take some of the resources and stress off of your server. I mean, my recommendation would be, the sooner the better, because we can help you through the process and even kind of just give you another price quote on the upgrade. I don't know how far along the process you are, but it's really up to you. It doesn't do any harm in kind of going through that upfront assessment sheet with us. And at the worst case, you just say, hey, I filled it out because Scott told me to, that, at the end of the day, I'm not going to be ready for 2 months. So follow up with me in, let's see, it's April and the end of June type ordeal. So that offer absolutely will stand. And Justin, thanks. I'll answer that with a you're welcome. So does anyone else have any questions? All right. Again, Carol Lee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you, speak with your group. Everyone that attended, thank you guys for attending. I hope there was some value in the presentation. I hope you guys are able, guys and ladies, I apologize, can take some information that I covered today and at the very worst, go back to the person that's managing your current technology and just ask some of these questions. Because at the end of the day, I want everyone to be protected and I want ransomware to go away so I don't have to worry about it. But unfortunately, the unprepared people in the world are going to continue to keep ransomware thriving, and I guess thankfully keep a place for Intermix IT in the business market. So, thank you all for tuning in. If you guys have any questions, Carol Lee has my contact information, or you can learn more at intermixit.com. Thank you.
Scott, thank you so very much, and thank you everyone for attending. As soon as the recorded file is available, I'll make sure to get it out to you all, okay? Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.